In this video, I'm going to show you how I built a custom Walnut Lectern as part of a 3-project commission for a local church. And I finally get to try out a tool that's been on my wish list. The lectern, often mistakenly called the podium or the pulpit, is the focal point of many sanctuaries, classrooms, and conference halls. And this is my opportunity to build my very first one. Like the other 2 videos, I started by dimensioning the lumber into straight, usable pieces. And since my design for the base required strips that were no longer than 24 inches, I was able to save quite a bit of material by squaring them in much smaller sections instead of across the whole length of the boards. I went with pocket holes for their strength and because I'll be stacking 2 of these squares to create a tiered effect. There'll also be screws that go through the inside face, holding the 2 tiers together. With the base completed, I started ripping the center column from wider stock. I had drawn up a really basic version of what I was envisioning, but as you may have noticed by now, I tend to make things up as I go when I'm designing this stuff, especially as I see it take shape and start noticing practical challenges that could be avoided or improvements I could make to usability or style. I'm also always looking for new tools or processes that could improve my workflow. And after saying, I bet a domino would have made this easier 3 times in the last 3 projects, I bit the bullet and ordered one for myself. Let's see if this thing lives up to the hype. The first thing I noticed is that it's solid and well made and was extremely easy to use. I can already tell I'll be getting a lot of use out of this in future projects. This thing is awesome. It's taken me a minute to just get used to how it works, but holy cow, this looks great. I was so excited to test out the new domino that I completely forgot that I needed to put a shelf in there. So I cut one of those out of some of the leftover wide stock and bored a hole in the corner for the cabling and electronics. I also added a spreader at the top to keep things from bowing inwards. Even though none of these would be visible in the final project, I took time now to fill in all the cracks and voids with CA glue. Here, I'm attaching the upright column to the base with wood screws. And I'm using this piece to bridge the gap in the back while creating another anchor point to attach the trim all the way around. I'd read online that the standard angle for the tops of these things was 20 degrees. So I was planning to build it similar to the way I'd built the base, but with the inner tier having a 20-degree angle I could attach the top surface to. I bought all this walnut from my local supplier, so I'm not really sure where it all came from. But a friend of mine has a stack that was cut down in the same community as the church that commissioned these. So I thought it would be a cool surprise to add a little bit of that walnut to the lectern. So I picked up a couple sticks and used those to glue up the top surface and the outer surround. The reason I'm using pocket holes here instead of the domino is essentially just to save time. This is never going to be seen. It's actually going to be attached to the side of the podium on either side. So this just saves me some time. I don't have to wait on the glue up. I used clamps on the back and some double-sided tape and a cutoff on the front to hold the upper surround completely level while I attached it through the holes I drilled earlier. I removed the top from the glue up and clamped it to the angled surface so I could directly scribe the cuts I'll need to make. Then I pre-drilled the holes I'll use to attach the top using a Forstner bit. I tried to sand all the pieces as I went before assembly to save as much time and trouble later as possible. And here's a useful tip I learned recently. I use paste wax on each of the screws, and it helps to prevent the wood below from splitting when not using a pilot hole. The customers had specifically requested that the top of the lectern be flat, but after seeing it in person and sitting my hands on it, I just had a really bad feeling that if the preacher ever gets to swinging his arms around, it could cause an injury. So with their permission, I added a matching angle to the sides and tapered all the edges. It would be pretty boring to just leave everything tiered with hard edges like this. So my plan was to add 45-degree chamfers and custom cut trim to ease all the transition. I also needed to leave the bottom column open so they can reach the floor plugs for microphones and power. Using cutoffs from the rest of the project, I ran them across the shaper against the decorative profile cutter to cut the trim pattern. Then ripped those down to size on the table saw. This really brought everything together, and I think was the perfect detail to finish up this design. I sanded everything down to 180, cleaned off all the sawdust, then sprayed it with 4 coats of General Finishes high-performance gloss over the next couple days. For the last 2 coats, I sanded with 220 and 330 in between. And that's how I built a custom walnut lectern and wrapped up this 3-part series on church furniture. At the time of this video, their sanctuary isn't done, but look for more shots of the final installation in the next few months over on Instagram and in my YouTube community page. Check out the description for links to the other videos as well as tools and materials used in this build. And if you'd like to get more frequent updates, give input on future projects and videos, as well as a host of other benefits, check out my Patreon, where we're building out a really cool community to do just that. Thanks so much for watching.